I'm Jo Colwill, commonly known by most people as the Mad Patchworker because I'm absolutely mad on animals and quilting and sewing and sharing my life on the farm with everybody. I've lived here for 37 years now and just hope to develop my business a little bit more, but always to have time for sewing. I've always loved sewing since I was a little girl, and horses, animals and sewing have always gone together for me. And when I was little, I used to go to people's houses, and I was probably really naughty because I liked looking in their drawers and seeing their fabric in their chest of drawers, I hasten to say. And there was a lovely lady called Lucy, and I used to go to her house to tea, and my mum always used to say, "You must be good today, don't break the cups or whatever." But she had the most wonderful chest of drawers with all this lovely fabric, dressmaking fabric. But that was like a really early inspiration. And my mum used to do dressmaking, so fabrics and colour, but also the landscape and the countryside have always been my inspiration. Applique is my favourite type of quilting or patchwork, and the vintage applique quilt that I've just finished for the book is my favourite quilt at the moment. I really love it. It's made of blues and greys and creams, and it's very subtle. It's all hand appliqued and all hand quilted, not all done by me. A very good student and friend, Eileen, has helped me because it took about 500 hours to do it, and I just didn't have the odd 500 hours. And Eileen has helped me, but I really love the gentleness of the quilt. I love appliquing all my little animals and people, but this quilt is a nice bed quilt and has a really gentle, friendly look about it. Today I'm going to show you how I do my needle turn applique. I start off by taking my drawing, and today we're going to do a simple daisy. If you want the daisy to be in a particular direction, if we want the daisy to be going this way finished, we need to trace onto the back of some ironed fabric that I have drawn a 6-inch finished square.
Right, and this here is your seam allowance then,
Yes.
is it? Okay.
I don't cut the fabric exactly to 1/4 inch. I do that after I've done the applique because it frays slightly. Some people on a bigger block would use an overlocker or put masking tape. I'm not that keen on that. I just think you re-trim the block after you've done the applique.
Okay, so you put the template on a light box here.
You do. So a light box doesn't have to be expensive. You can make one out of an old window as long as it's safety glass. Take your drawing and place it down with a little bit of masking tape so that the drawing doesn't move. And then just with an ordinary fine pencil or a quilting pencil if you prefer, but something that's not going to disappear. I'm not overly keen on water-soluble pens because they can return at a later date. Draw like this, holding it between your thumb and finger. There's advantages to farmer's wife hands. They're good and flat for holding down the drawing.
You've got a nice steady hand there, Jo.
Well, I rest my hand on the light box. If you're up like this, you go shaky. And the tracing is going to be very crucial to how accurately your block comes out. If you trace with wobbly lines, then you're going to get your sewing with wobbly lines. So now we've got the traced on block.
Great.
And we think about the fabrics.
Yeah.
And I've got some pinks and a yellow for the centre of the daisy and a shaded green. These ombre fabrics are good value because you get a lot of colour in one long quarter.
Yeah.
When we drew the square onto the fabric, I had the edge of the square on the straight grain, parallel to the selvage. But for the stem of the daisy, we can place the fabric wherever we want, and this is where I find the light box still quite useful to do this because you can see through. And I keep the drawing beside me, and then I'm going to pin, and this is the part of the daisy that I want, and it's a nice spring green because spring's on the way now. And we're going to pin it like this, and then we're going to tack with a slightly larger needle. Now some people would take an oblong of fabric, but then you've wasted what you cut off.
Yes.
So to tack, I don't start with a knot, and you're going to take these stitches out. So they don't need to be minuscule, just enough to hold the fabric in place. And these are going to be like your road lines when you turn over. And then we're going to cut off. You don't need to end off. And then when we turn to this side, because we've used a contrasting thread, we can see where we're going to go really well.
Yes, you can.
Now there's all sorts of nice sharp pointed scissors.
Yeah.
These little ones I really love. And when people come to classes, I always say to them, put your name on, because they're the kind of thing that everybody has the same. So now I've cut as carefully as I can a small seam allowance, which is probably about 4 millimeters or 3/16 if people like imperial.
So can you just can I just turn that over? So you've there you've got your stem very clearly, and
you've wasted no
nothing,
fabric here,
and you've got exactly the right seam allowance because you've cut it out to fit your tacking. Yes.
Yeah. Later on, when we do a leaf, these little bits, you're not wasting any fabric.
No.
Whereas if you cut out an oblong, but that's just my personal opinion. So now we're ready to sew, and for the sewing down, I use little gold eye applique needles, and although I've got quite big hands, or not nice hands, I love these little needles. So now to start, you can see why I haven't done a knot now, because I can just pull that knot through. And because we tacked with a slightly bigger needle, when I take out the tackings, I can see a little row of dots there.
Yes.
I have used this just with a pale fabric. It's easier on some fabrics than others. And then you turn in to those dots.
Ooh, you've done that before.
I love doing this. I can't spell a thing, but I really love doing this. If you're going to put a white flower petal on, you need to be careful to trim the green fabric neatly so that it doesn't show through as a shadow. But we're going to put a pink on in a minute anyway. And I go in with the needle, and then I come up on the edge, leaving that little tail. I don't start with a knot. And then I go in and up on the edge of the applique. And one of my applique heroines, Ellie Sienkiewicz, who I think I mentioned earlier, I noticed this stitch in her book a long time ago, and that's when I changed from the tack stitch or from the applique stitch to this tack stitch, because I think it's much more accurate and strong. So I'm going
and pretty invisible too.
Yes. Matching thread to the fabric that you're sewing down and the small needles. People say, oh, I can't possibly use a little needle like that, but you'll be amazed. I use them for everything now. I love them.
What size is that needle?
It's number 12, gold eye. It would be like a sharp. They're called sharps. Ordinary sewing needles are sharps.
It really is small, isn't it?
Yes. You don't want to use a quilting needle. People say, oh, I use a little quilting needle. They're fat around.
I see.
Because they have to withstand the rocking of the quilting.
I understand.
So you don't want to make a big hole. So we've sewn down one side, and we're coming up to the first point where you need to turn. So I visualise where my tackings are, and then if you just clip a tiny bit of the point off, I would rather tuck under a little extra fabric and not have it fray than cut off so much that it does fray.
Yes.
Fold it under with the point of the needle and then in.
Oh, look at that.
Like that.
That's super neat.
And then again it's clamped between my finger and my thumb to hold it still, and then the little stitches. And the stitches come with practice. You're not going to be absolutely brilliant at them to start, and you're going to worry that you're maybe not on the line on the back. But the more you practice, I always have this joke that you don't go in the marathon or Grand Prix and win first time or make a Mary Berry cake. You have to practice a little bit. Take out the tacking and push it in under, like that.
Yes.
And then a little stitch right in the point.
Right on
and
the
you'll
corner.
notice that I just kept poking it with the needle a little bit. I know we're resting on the light box now, but in a normal situation, I would just have my hands on the table.
Okay. You wouldn't normally stitch on the light
No,
box?
no, I would move it out the way, but just for quickness. Although the light box is very handy for positioning your fabrics. So now we're going to turn around this corner, keeping the tacking thread out the way,
Of course.
and turn in, and I start ahead of where I am and turn it back
Okay.
to where I've stitched.
I see.
And actually that's gone in really nicely. Sometimes you have to manipulate it a couple of times with the point, but that went very nicely.
Well, I can see you've been practicing. You're ready for your quilt marathon.
I was watching this thing about flowers on the television last night, growing peonies, and when they were cutting them, it made me think of summer and all lovely flowers. But by choosing lovely fabrics, shaded fabrics, you can make flowers so realistic now. So now we're going to sew up that side, and then when we get to the top, we'll end off. And I end off just in the flower petal. I think with the light box still on, you can see where the stem is just
Yes.
under the flower petal. So when you're building things up, you've got to have this underlap. And then we would tack on this flower petal and sew it, but you don't need to sew the top part because it will be covered by the centre of the daisy.
So you layer things on. You do the stem
Yes.
first, then the petals, then
Yeah.
the head of the daisy.
And the more complicated the applique is, say it's a figure and somebody with jeans and wellies on, you would put their jeans on first and then the wellies have to
Yes.
go, or the hands will go up the arms,
Yes.
or a neck will go behind a shirt.
Yes.
It's like that game of felt. Things.
Fuzzy felt.
Fuzzy felts.
That's
yeah.
it.
So we've got one finished here
Oh, fantastic.
that I've done each petal.
And I can
Petal
see
by
the stem
petal.
underneath the petal
Yes,
here.
but just because we've got the light box on, we can just see it through. Again, if you had a white petal, you'd need to be careful to trim this really neatly.
Yes.
But it's such a quick way. If you'd done it the traditional way of applique, you would have to have cut out 2 leaf templates because they're slightly different, a stem, different petals.
Yes.
And then for the centre, I do cut a card disc,
Yeah.
and I gather the fabric around
Oh, okay.
and pull it up and iron it and sew it down. But basically, I've sewn hundreds of these daisies and I haven't got one quilt with them on because they've all gone to various raffles and things. But it is one of the most popular flowers that everybody loves, daisies, and it makes them smile. Whether they're pink, purple or sky blue with dots on, they're popular and they're fun to do.
They are. And this is beautiful. Fantastic.
I am really lucky that I love my life totally, and I love sharing it with everybody. And when I look back, I probably have been really presumptuous in asking top people to come when it's quite a small business, but it's grown and grown, and we have had Lynette Anderson and Di Ford from Australia. We've had a teacher from France, but I still have on my wish list, I would love to have Dorothy Colwill from Canada. I went to a lecture of hers at the NEC, and she just was such a lovely speaker and so inspirational. And because my sister lives in Norway, I love Scandinavia, and I love the Tilda lady, Tuna Fananga, and I really admire her work. And it's not only learning to sew and create quilts, but it creates friendships all around the world. So hopefully one day I can get those two people to come here.